It started as an ordinary day, one of those days where life feels like it's running on autopilot. I woke up to the faint aroma of coffee brewing downstairs, a small comfort in what had become a house filled with tension. My name is Ethan, and for the past 10 years, I've been married to Sophia. At least, that's how long we've shared a home. Whether we've truly shared a life together, well, that question gnawed at me more each passing day. Sophia was already in the kitchen when I walked in, her back turned to me as she arranged plates on the counter. She didn't acknowledge my presence, not even with a glance or a word. It wasn't unusual anymore. Our conversations had dwindled to logistics about bills, groceries, and occasionally, work. The warmth between us had faded so gradually that I almost convinced myself it was normal. Almost. "Good morning," I said softly, hoping to break through whatever invisible wall she'd erected this time. She gave me a curt nod but didn't respond verbally. Instead, she focused intently on setting out silverware, her movements precise and deliberate, as if every detail mattered more than anything else in the world. "I thought maybe we could talk tonight?" I ventured cautiously. Just reconnect?" Sophia froze mid-motion, her hand hovering over a fork. For a moment, I thought she might actually turn around and look at me, perhaps soften slightly. But then she resumed her task, placing the utensil down with unnecessary force. "We'll see," she muttered under her breath before walking away without another word. Her dismissiveness stung, though I tried not to let it show. Over the years, I'd learned to wear a mask, a calm exterior hiding the turmoil within. Still, there was something different about today. Something felt off. And it wasn't just Sophia's cold demeanor. Later that evening, after dinner, which we ate separately, Sophia approached me while I sat reading in the living room. Her tone was clipped, businesslike. "My parents are coming over for dinner tomorrow night." I lowered my book, surprised by the sudden announcement. Her parents hadn't visited in months, not since their last awkward family gathering where subtle jabs were exchanged beneath forced smiles. "Okay," I replied slowly. "Should I pick up anything from the store?" "No need," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "I've got everything under control." There it was again, that strange vibe. Normally, Sophia would delegate tasks to me during these situations, complaining about how much effort hosting required. But now, she seemed unusually eager to handle everything herself. Why? As she walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing beneath the surface, something I wasn't privy to yet. Little did I know, tomorrow's dinner would change everything. The next day dragged on like molasses in winter. I went through the motions at work, answering emails and attending meetings, but my mind kept drifting back to Sophia's announcement. Her parents' visit felt less like a casual family dinner and more like an event she was meticulously orchestrating. What was she planning? And why did it feel as though I were being set up for something? When I arrived home that evening, the house smelled of roasted garlic and fresh herbs, a stark contrast to the tension that had been building between us. Sophia was in the kitchen again, moving with purpose as she prepared dishes I hadn't seen her make in years. She glanced at me briefly when I walked in, then returned to her chopping without saying a word. "Need any help?" I asked, trying to sound casual despite the unease prickling at the back of my neck. "No," she replied curtly, not even looking up from the cutting board. "Just stay out of the way." Her tone stung, but I bit back my frustration. Instead, I retreated to the living room and sank into the couch, staring blankly at the wall. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just her behavior. It was the energy in the air, heavy and charged, like the calm before a thunderstorm. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Sophia straightened her posture, smoothing down her blouse before heading to the front door. I followed behind her, feeling oddly out of place in my own home. When she opened the door, her parents, Margaret and Harold, stood there, dressed impeccably as always. Margaret gave me a tight smile, while Harold nodded stiffly in greeting. "Ethan," Margaret said, her voice carrying that familiar edge of disapproval. "How are you?" "I'm well, thank you," I replied politely, forcing a smile. "And you?" "Oh, we're fine," she said breezily, brushing past me to enter the house. Harold followed suit, his gaze sweeping over the room as if inspecting it for flaws. Dinner was served shortly after, and we all took our seats around the table. The food looked exquisite: roasted chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables. But the atmosphere was suffocating. Conversation was sparse, punctuated by awkward silences and thinly veiled criticisms from Margaret about everything from the lighting in the dining room to the choice of wine. At one point, Harold turned to me with a smirk. "So, Ethan, how's work going? Still stuck in that same old position?" I clenched my jaw but managed to keep my tone even. "It's steady. Pays the bills." Sophia shot me a glance, her expression unreadable. Was this what she wanted? To embarrass me in front of her parents? To make me look incompetent or unworthy? If so, it wasn't working. I refused to give them the satisfaction. But as the meal wore on, I began to notice something else. Sophia seemed nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass of water, and she avoided meeting my eyes whenever possible. Even her laughter at Margaret's snide remarks sounded forced, brittle. By the time dessert was served, I couldn't take it anymore. "Is everything okay, Sophia?" I asked, my voice low but firm. "You seem distracted." She froze, fork halfway to her mouth, before setting it down gently. For a moment, I thought she might actually say something honest. But then she plastered on a smile and said, "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" Her response only deepened my suspicion. There was something she wasn't telling me, something big, and whatever it was eating away at her composure. As the evening drew to a close and her parents prepared to leave, Sophia walked them to the door, leaving me alone in the living room. I sat there, staring at the empty plates and half-empty glasses, my mind racing. Something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. And I had no idea how much it would change everything. Little did I know, the truth was closer than I realized. All it would take was one careless mistake on Sophia's part to unravel the fragile facade she'd worked so hard to maintain. The house fell silent after Sophia's parents left, the echo of their footsteps fading into the night. I stayed seated in the living room, my thoughts tangled like knots I couldn't untie. Something about tonight had felt staged, as if Sophia wasn't just trying to embarrass me but was also hiding something far deeper. I heard her footsteps returning from the front door, slow and deliberate. She paused briefly before stepping into the living room, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her expression was guarded, almost defensive, as though she expected me to say something, or accuse her of something. What was that all about? I finally asked, breaking the silence. My voice was calm, measured, but there was an undercurrent of frustration beneath it. "Why did you invite them here? Was this some kind of show?" Sophia hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine. For a moment, she looked conflicted, as though she were wrestling with whether or not to tell me the truth. But then her features hardened, and she let out a sharp exhale. "It doesn't matter," she said dismissively. "You wouldn't understand anyway." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. "Try me," I shot back, my tone sharper now. "Because right now, it feels like I don't understand anything anymore. Not you, not us, not why we're even still doing this." She flinched at my response, but instead of answering, she turned toward the kitchen. "I'm cleaning up," she muttered, avoiding further conversation. I watched her go, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Whatever game she was playing, I was tired of being kept in the dark. That's when I noticed it, a faint glow coming from her purse, which she'd left on the dining table. It was her phone, its screen lighting up with a notification. Curiosity got the better of me. I told myself it was harmless, just a glance to see who might be messaging her so late. But as I picked up the device, my stomach dropped. The lock screen displayed a text preview, and what I saw made my blood run cold. "Tonight went perfectly. He didn't suspect a thing. Let's meet tomorrow at the usual spot." My hands trembled as I stared at the message. The sender's name was unfamiliar, someone listed only as L. But the meaning behind the words was crystal clear. My mind raced, piecing together fragments of suspicion that had lingered in the shadows for months. Sophia's sudden distance, her secretive phone calls, the way she always seemed to have everything under control lately. I felt sick, physically ill, as the realization washed over me. Betrayal, deception, lies. All this time, I'd been living a lie, sharing a home with someone who didn't love me anymore. If she ever truly had. Sophia re-entered the room just as I set the phone back down. She froze when she saw me standing there, my expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice rising slightly. "I could ask you the same question," I replied, my tone icy. I held up her phone, letting the weight of the evidence hang between us. "Care to explain?" Her face paled instantly, and for the first time since I'd known her, Sophia looked genuinely afraid. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she took a step back, clutching the edge of the counter for support. "It's not what you think," she stammered eventually, her voice trembling. "Ethan, please, let me explain." But I didn't want explanations. Not yet. I needed space, to breathe, to process, to figure out how to navigate the wreckage of my life. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her standing there amidst the ruins of our marriage. As I sat alone in the quiet darkness of our bedroom, my mind replayed every interaction we'd ever had, searching for signs I'd missed. How could I have been so blind? And more importantly, what was I going to do now? Betrayal is a bitter pill to swallow, and as the hours ticked by, one thing became painfully clear. Forgiveness wasn't an option. Not this time. The night stretched on endlessly, each minute feeling like an hour. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as thoughts swirled chaotically in my mind. Sophia hadn't followed me into the bedroom. Perhaps she knew better than to try speaking to me now. Or maybe she was too ashamed. Either way, her absence only deepened the chasm between us. Sleep eluded me completely. Every time I closed my eyes, flashes of the text message invaded my thoughts. "Let's meet tomorrow at the usual spot." Those words replayed over and over again, taunting me with their implications. Who was Elle? How long had this been going on? And how many lies had Sophia told to keep it hidden? By morning, exhaustion weighed heavily on me, but anger burned brighter than fatigue. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, Sophia was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone. She looked up when she heard me approach, her expression a mixture of guilt and apprehension. "We need to talk," I said flatly, cutting straight to the point. My voice betrayed none of the turmoil inside me. It was cold, detached, almost clinical. Sophia set her mug down slowly, her hands visibly shaking. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know you're upset, but—" "Upset?" I interrupted sharply, my tone slicing through the air like a blade. "You think I'm upset? That word doesn't even begin to cover what I'm feeling right now." She flinched at my response, tears welling up in her eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but it vanished just as quickly. Pity wouldn't fix this. Nothing could. "I deserve answers," I continued, my voice low but firm. "Who is Elle? How long has this been going on? And don't bother lying to me. You've done enough of that already." Sophia hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked under the weight of her confession. "His name is Lucas," she admitted softly. We met 6 months ago. It started innocently. At first, it was just coffee, talking about work. But then, her voice trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. The pieces fell into place all too easily. 6 months. Half a year of deception, of stolen moments behind my back, of her pretending to care about our marriage while secretly planning its demise. And last night, I pressed, my jaw tightening. "Was that part of your plan too? To embarrass me in front of your parents so you'd have leverage later?" "No," she exclaimed, shaking her head vehemently. "That wasn't supposed to happen. I mean, yes, I invited them because I thought if they saw how unhappy we are, it would make things easier. But I never wanted to hurt you like this." "Easier for who?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "For you? So you can walk away without any guilt?" Newsflash, Sophia. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to play victim here. Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know I messed up," she sobbed. "I know I ruined everything. But Ethan, please, can we at least try to fix this? Counseling, separation, anything but throwing away 10 years like this." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. Did she really believe I'd forgive her after everything? That I'd sit across from her in some therapist's office and hash out our problems like this was just a rough patch? No, this wasn't something counseling could mend. Trust, once broken, couldn't be glued back together. Not when it had shattered into so many jagged pieces. You want to fix this? I asked bitterly, leaning forward until our faces were inches apart. Fine. Here's how we'll start. You leave. Pack your things and go wherever it is you've been sneaking off to these past 6 months. Because there's no fixing us, not after this. Sophia gasped, her tears halting abruptly. You can't mean that, she whispered, her voice trembling. You're just angry. Give yourself time to cool down and— No, I cut her off, my voice steel. Don't insult me by pretending this is just a tantrum. I've made my decision. If you won't leave voluntarily, I'll make sure you regret staying. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Sophia stared at me, searching for some sign of weakness, some crack in my resolve. But she wouldn't find one. Not today. Not ever again. As she turned and fled the room, I sank into a chair, my body heavy with both relief and sorrow. Relief that I'd finally confronted the truth, and sorrow for the life I'd lost. Yet beneath it all, another emotion simmered, anger. Cold, calculated anger. And with it came the first stirrings of a plan. A way to ensure Sophia paid for what she'd done. Betrayal demands consequences, and I intended to deliver them. The hours that followed were a blur of silence and seething thoughts. Sophia had retreated to the guest bedroom, slamming the door behind her in a rare display of defiance, or perhaps desperation. I didn't care which it was. She could cry, scream, or beg for forgiveness. None of it would change my resolve. What she had done wasn't something I could simply move past. This betrayal wasn't just about infidelity. It was about trust shattered, dignity trampled, and years of my life wasted on a lie. I sat at the dining table, staring blankly at the surface as if searching for answers etched into the wood grain. My mind raced with possibilities, scenarios, and outcomes. How far was I willing to go? Could I really carry out what I was beginning to envision? And more importantly, did I have the strength to live with myself afterward? For now, though, practicality took precedence over morality. Revenge required planning, precision, and patience. I couldn't act rashly, not when so much was at stake. First, I needed evidence, irrefutable proof that would expose Sophia's deceit not only to me but to everyone who mattered. Her parents, her friends, even Lucas, whoever he was. My eyes drifted to her purse, still sitting on the counter where she'd left it last night. It felt wrong to invade her privacy again, but guilt no longer held any power over me. If anything, it fueled my determination. Slowly, I rose from the chair and approached the bag, opening it with deliberate care. Inside, I found her phone, its screen dark but charged with secrets. Unlocking it proved easier than expected. In her panic last night, Sophia hadn't thought to change her passcode. A simple 4-digit number I'd memorized long ago during one of those mundane moments when couples share such trivial details without realizing their significance. As the screen lit up, I navigated to her messages, scrolling through conversations until I found the thread with Elle. Each message was a dagger, slicing deeper into whatever remnants of love I still harbored for her. They spoke of stolen afternoons, whispered promises, and plans for a future together. A future that didn't include me. There were photos too, innocuous at first glance, but damning upon closer inspection. A selfie of them laughing over coffee. A sunset captured from what looked like a park bench. Small, seemingly innocent gestures that added up to an undeniable truth. This wasn't a fleeting mistake. It was calculated, intentional, and ongoing. But the most incriminating piece of evidence came in the form of a calendar app. Hidden within its depths were entries marked cryptically, meeting with Elle, dinner plans, late night. Each notation corresponded to times when Sophia had claimed to be working late, visiting her mother, or attending some other fabricated obligation. Seeing it all laid bare made my stomach churn with equal parts disgust and rage. I copied everything onto a flash drive, ensuring I had backups stored securely online. Then, I deleted my browsing history and cleared any trace of my intrusion. When I returned the phone to her purse, it was as though I'd never touched it. Only now, I held all the cards, and I intended to play them carefully. As the day wore on, I began drafting emails and texts, crafting narratives designed to unravel Sophia's carefully constructed facade. I knew exactly whom to contact: Margaret and Harold, her judgmental yet oblivious parents, a few mutual friends who idolized her, and even Lucas himself. But I wouldn't send anything prematurely. Timing was everything. I needed to strike when the moment was right, when the impact would be greatest. By evening, exhaustion finally caught up with me. I collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling as my mind replayed every step of my plan. Was I being cruel? Perhaps. But cruelty was a small price to pay for justice. After all, Sophia had chosen this path when she decided to betray me. Now, it was my turn to choose how the story ended. And end it would, with her humiliation laid bare for the world to see. As sleep finally claimed me, one thought lingered in the recesses of my mind. Revenge is a dish best served cold. But revenge wasn't enough. Not entirely. I wanted more. I wanted her to feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me. And for that, I needed to dig deeper, uncovering truths she hadn't anticipated I'd find. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. My mind was sharp, focused, and unyielding. There was no room for doubt or hesitation. Not anymore. This wasn't just about punishing Sophia. It was about reclaiming control over my life. For too long, I'd let her dictate the terms of our relationship, tiptoeing around her moods and insecurities. Now, the tables had turned. I started by reaching out to an old acquaintance, a private investigator named Marcus whom I'd met years ago during a business conference. He specialized in uncovering secrets that people thought were buried deep enough to never see the light of day. A quick phone call was all it took to set things in motion. "Marcus," I said when he answered, my voice steady, "I need your help with something delicate." He chuckled on the other end, his tone laced with intrigue. "Delicate is my middle name, Ethan. What's going on?" "I suspect my wife has been less than faithful," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "I have some evidence, but I need you to dig deeper. Find out everything you can about her affair. Where they meet, how often, any connections she might not want exposed." There was a pause before Marcus responded, his tone turning serious. "You sure you want to go down this road? Once you know, there's no turning back." "I'm sure," I said firmly. "And trust me, I don't plan on turning back." After hanging up, I spent the rest of the day preparing. I drafted emails to Margaret and Harold, framing them as concerned messages from a loving husband worried about their daughter's erratic behavior. I included vague hints about financial discrepancies and questionable friendships, planting seeds of suspicion without outright accusing her. These emails wouldn't be sent yet. They were merely placeholders, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Meanwhile, Sophia avoided me like a shadow. She stayed holed up in the guest bedroom, occasionally emerging only to grab food or use the bathroom. Each time she passed me, her eyes darted away, guilt written plainly across her face. It was almost pathetic how transparent she was now that the truth was out. But I didn't gloat or confront her further. Let her stew in her own fear. It would make the eventual fallout that much sweeter. 2 days later, Marcus called me back. His voice was grim, almost apologetic. "Ethan, you're not going to like what I found." "Try me," I said coldly. He proceeded to lay out the details. Sophia and Lucas had been meeting regularly at a small cafe downtown, always choosing secluded corners where they could talk freely. They'd exchanged hundreds of messages, many of which hinted at plans to leave town together once they had enough money saved. Worse still, Marcus discovered that Sophia had been siphoning funds from our joint account, small amounts here and there, likely intended to finance their escape. But the final revelation hit hardest. Lucas wasn't just some random coworker or acquaintance. He was married too, with 2 young children. Their affair wasn't just a betrayal of me. It was a betrayal of his family as well. When Marcus finished speaking, I sat in stunned silence, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. The depth of Sophia's deception was staggering. She hadn't just destroyed our marriage. She'd ruined someone else's too. And for what? A fleeting romance built on lies? Thanks, Marcus, I said finally, my voice hollow. Send me everything you've got. By the time the documents arrived, I felt numb. Numbness was good. It meant I could think clearly, act decisively. I compiled the new information into a dossier, organizing every text, photo, and transaction into a damning narrative. Then, I added one final touch, a timeline detailing exactly when and where Sophia had betrayed me. It was thorough, meticulous, and utterly devastating. Now came the hard part, deciding who to share it with. Choosing the first target was easy. Margaret and Harold, Sophia's parents, were notorious gossips within their social circle. If I could plant the seed of doubt in their minds, it would spread like wildfire. I opened the draft email I'd prepared earlier and attached a selection of texts between Sophia and Lucas, along with a brief explanation. Subject: Concerns about Sophia. Dear Margaret and Harold, I hope this message finds you well. As much as I hate to bring this up, I feel obligated to share something troubling I've recently discovered regarding Sophia. Over the past several months, she's been acting increasingly distant and secretive. Upon closer inspection, I found evidence suggesting she may be involved in a relationship outside our marriage. Enclosed are screenshots of communications that speak for themselves. While I understand this is difficult to hear, I believe transparency is crucial moving forward. Please let me know if you'd like to discuss this further. Sincerely, Ethan. I hesitated for a moment before hitting send. The ball was now in their court. Knowing Margaret's penchant for drama, she'd waste no time confronting Sophia, and when she did, the fallout would be spectacular. Sure enough, less than an hour later, the house erupted into chaos. Sophia's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages, each notification accompanied by the sound of her panicked breathing. Finally, she emerged from the guest bedroom, her face pale and tear-streaked. "They know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My parents, they know everything." "Good," I replied icily, refusing to look at her. "Maybe now they'll see you for who you really are." She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "Why are you doing this?" she sobbed. "Haven't you hurt me enough?" "No," I said flatly. "Not even close." With Sophia's parents aware of her infidelity, the next step was broader exposure. Social media became my weapon of choice. Using an anonymous account, I posted snippets of the evidence online, tagging mutual friends and acquaintances. Within hours, whispers turned into full-blown scandal. People messaged me privately, expressing shock and disbelief. Others reached out to Sophia, demanding explanations. Her world crumbled around her. Friends distanced themselves, co-workers avoided her, and invitations dried up overnight. Even Lucas distanced himself, fearing the repercussions of being publicly linked to her. By the end of the week, Sophia was isolated, a pariah in her own community. Yet, I wasn't done. Not yet. For my last act of vengeance, I contacted Lucas's wife. Her reaction was immediate and visceral. She filed for divorce, taking custody of their children and freezing their assets. When confronted, Lucas tried to deny everything, but the evidence spoke louder than his lies. Sophia, meanwhile, broke completely. She begged me to stop, promising to leave town and disappear forever. But I refused. Every ounce of pain she caused me was returned tenfold. Justice, however bitter, had been served. In the aftermath, I sold the house and moved to a quiet coastal town. The scars of betrayal remained, but so did a newfound sense of freedom. Revenge hadn't healed me entirely, but it had given me closure, and sometimes that's all we can ask for. As I stood on the beach watching the waves crash against the shore, I realized something important. Forgiveness isn't always possible. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply surviving and thriving, in spite of those who sought to destroy us.